It's back to school time. This year, Sport Clips Haircuts will send you back in style with the prize package sure to send you straight to the head of the class. Visit sportclips.com/back-to-school for your chance to win. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, and away we go. After a weekend that at times felt surreal. You know, we live our professional lives here in the protective cocoon of fun and games, and I've always invited you to share that with us, and we will certainly get to all of that this morning. But there are some days when it just doesn't seem possible to dive right into Zeke Elliott's suspension and Bryce Harper's injury and the PGA without first mentioning the events in Charlottesville over the weekend, Mike, which I know we all sat and watched on television, whatever other ways people consume these portions of information in this day and age, and found them heartbreaking and shocking and at times very difficult to process.
Oh, yeah, very difficult to watch and hear what was going on. You could see the highlights and of that. Highlights. You see the video of it, I should say, and then, you know, to hear the incredibly horrific story of the man that took his car and plowed it into a crowd. I mean, it's just devastating. Some of the things going on, and we can't help but to dive into it some, because to me there is a correlation to some of the things going on in the sporting world with this that I want to show a difference in. So I definitely do have, as many do, as you'll hear from a Chris and Kyle Long, you know, the Long family from Charlottesville, you know, will comment about this. And the one thing I liked hearing from Chris is he said, you know, people don't want me to say anything. They just want ball players to shut up and play ball. He said, I don't tell anybody who works another job to not have an opinion about something. I can have an opinion about something. And he's right. He is right about that. There is nothing wrong with having an opinion about things, and I think we'll all have an opinion about this. And it was hard to watch and tough to watch, and this is what's going on. Some of the things in our country, as far as things going on in the world, it's there, it's real, it's tough to talk about. But we also don't want to lose sight of the fact that you all tune into this show to talk about sports, to get away from some of that, but sometimes it just bleeds in too much that we're going to discuss it and have to discuss it. But there were sporting events that went on, some good, some bad, some injuries that we see again that we certainly want to talk about with all of you as well.
Correct. That's the line we're going to walk today. So we're going to start you with Off the Top, which will give you a sense of the sports headlines of the day. We will share some thoughts on the events in Charlottesville, and you'll hear from some people who are directly involved, and then we will get into all of the other major sports headlines of the day, including Zeke Elliott and Bryce Harper and a whole lot more. Let's go off the top here, Mike, and it starts with Sunday Night Baseball. It was a big series between the Red Sox and the Yankees, and Boston wins the finale of it last night. That's a significant win as the Red Sox are opening up a cushion in the American League East.
Yeah, and a couple of youngsters, including, how about Rafael Devers hitting a home run off Aroldis Chapman in the ninth inning? It was just under 103 miles an hour. A ball that you and I would do exactly the same thing. And even though I played 9 years in the NFL and you played in Little League baseball, we would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
We would have done the same thing. We would have hit the dirt. Right. If a 103-mile-an-hour fastball is thrown out of anybody's hand coming at us, and this dude knocks it out of the park. Absolutely incredible. And no left-handed pitcher had been more difficult for left-handed hitters to homer off than Aroldis Chapman. Entering Sunday, Chapman had allowed just one home run to 418 lefties faced in his career. It's the lowest percentage for any pitcher in lefty-lefty matchups since 2010. Dude took it yard. Pretty impressive what he did. Then it was Andrew Benintendi who hit the RBI single in the 10th inning for the game winner. It's the third time he's done that this year.
Yeah, and as far as Chapman is concerned, he just hasn't been quite himself this year, whether it was overuse in the World Series last year or whatever the reason is, just hasn't been. But you can't blame it on if there's a ball 103 miles an hour, you can't say that his velocity was impacted by fatigue. So it's kind of hard to the point at that, but one way or another, it's a huge win for the Red Sox, a huge series there, and again, Boston opening up a little bit of a cushion. Giancarlo Stanton, Mike, goes deep again yesterday, his 250th career home run.
Also his 42nd this year, so now he's tied with Gary Sheffield, who in 1996 did it for the most home runs in a season in Marlins history. Stanton homer came in his 114th game, his 42nd. Sheffield's 42nd home run came September 12th of that year. It was the 147th game. Greeny, he is on pace for 58 home runs this year. That's the most since Ryan Howard had in 08. If he were to get to that and go two more and get to 60, or go back to the, what was it, Sosa and Bonds?
2001.
Yeah, 2001 with that number. So he is doing some incredible things for a guy. When he signed that deal, you're like, oh, my, the $325 million deal. And then he dealt with some injuries, including when he got
hit in the face.
Yeah. It was horrible, missing time. But, man, he has got the stick going.
I have some thoughts on that. And did you see what happened to Rich Hill over the weekend?
I did. Yep.
You know, how guys get up there and continue to play after stuff like that. If you don't think it takes courage to play these games, you're out of your mind. What else? Okay, Zeke Elliott is expected to file officially his appeal for his suspension tomorrow. And everything I'm reading and every sense I'm getting suggests that we are set up here for another one of these deals like we had with Brady, where you're going to be in court and you're going to have this. The union is fighting. There's going to be a lot of talk going back and forth between the two sides. We'll see. And we'll see if Zeke is able to get some sort of an injunction that enables him to play when the season begins.
Yeah, we'll see how far this one goes, because remember, we knew he was going to appeal. The appeal process goes back to the commissioner, or he can appoint a designee to hear the case, and this is the power that they have. So this is something that has been fought, but this has been agreed to at this point. Will it change in 2021 or before, somehow, some way, before the next CBA? We'll see, but that's how the appeal process works. A lot to jump into with this one as well.
All right, we'll
off the top.
Get to that. The fantasy football marathon begins, or returns, I should say, beginning tonight. 28 straight hours of coverage. Starts 7 o'clock Eastern Time. It is also known as the Mike Golic Jr. Festival of Fun, as he and Sarah Spain will just be racing around doing ridiculous things all over your television.
But into this fantasy again, you know, you and I have talked about it. We jumped into the game late here on just how popular it is. My son Mike and I were in Minnesota, ESPN 1500 out there. Had a huge fantasy football draft preview and such. We had a bunch of people up on stage with us doing it. We did a mock draft, and hundreds of people showing up for the information. It is unreal how popular it is, and obviously in this marathon, you are going to get all the information you need. Just know that two running backs are going to go first. Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson. Last year in the mock draft we had during it, Bobby Flay was a celebrity picker involved in the show, and he took David Johnson. We laughed at him, and David Johnson was an absolute star. So it's running backs, it's wide receivers, it's maybe the deepest quarterback fantasy draft that we'll have in a while as far as quarterbacks you can take and how deep that is. So we'll have a ton of talk of that, obviously, today and really tomorrow on that.
And Zeke Elliott is a guy who would have been a high pick and now clearly falling down those boards as he'll miss the first 6 games. And congratulations to Justin Thomas. This was a very popular win among the young players on the PGA Tour. He is one of the young stars. He's very close to guys like particularly Jordan Spieth, but also Ricky Fowler and a lot of the other young American players. They were delighted to see their friend win his first major championship yesterday.
Youngest to win the PGA Championship in the stroke play era since 1958. He's 4th. Rory McIlroy was the youngest, then Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods. They were all somewhere in their 23rd year. Justin Thomas is 3 months into his 24th year. But how about what he's done? He won this, obviously, PGA Championship. He shot the lowest round to par in U.S. Open history, the 3rd round when he went 9 under 63. He shot the lowest 72-hole score in PGA Tour history, 253, at the Sony Open in Hawaii, and became the 7th and youngest player in PGA Tour history to shoot a sub-60 first round 59 in that Sony Open in Hawaii. So at 24 years old, he's and it was his 4th win this year, by the way, as well. So we keep talking about the young guns we had. You can start to throw this guy's name into it as well.
And that, my friends, is off the top.
Which
is brought to you by Zipa. Go to Zipa.com. That's ZYPPAH.com and get a Zipa so you can stop snoring and enjoy the summer. We will get to all of the other traditional sports stuff as the morning continues here on Mike and Mike. But as I mentioned, there were events this weekend, and you don't need me to tell you what they were, that I think, sort of demand at least some conversation on a program like this where we have been here as long as we have and people have spent as much time with us as they have, and B, also because they do connect in some ways direct and even or more to the point indirectly into events in the sports world, as you saw two more very high-profile football stars fail to stand for the national anthem over the weekend. On Saturday, it was Marshawn Lynch, who is one of the best-known players in the National Football League, one of its biggest stars, one of its most beloved figures and characters. And then Michael Bennett of the Seahawks, who may not be quite as well known as a guy like Lynch or Colin Kaepernick, but is certainly within the football world known to be an extremely intelligent, extremely thoughtful, extremely passionate person. So I think he's one of those that when he speaks, you listen. And so those things come together here to provide a sports connection to the conversation that we can have this morning. So, Mike, I'll let you start, and then we'll get to some of the sound here.
I think, and that's right, I put the connection of let's call it protest, right? That's what we're looking at, which everybody has the right to do, but you don't have a right to see what was going on in Charlottesville. I guess that's where I would go. A lot of talk of Colin Kaepernick and the protests that he started and others had done as well. And you, as I said, can agree or disagree with what he did all you want. And that is absolutely your right and fine, just as it was his right to kneel for the national anthem. We can have all the discussion in the world on why you would agree with it, why you would disagree with it. And then other players that followed, and Bennett that just did it and said he doesn't plan on standing for the national anthem, and what Marshawn Lynch did. All I would say is, and there'll be discussion, and there'll be people that will back them, and there'll be people that will say, I'm not watching the NFL again, right, because of that, like they did with Colin Kaepernick. I guess the one thing I would say is, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, which again is your right to do, it was done in a way of a peaceful protest. All I would say is look at what they did and what they're saying, and you can, as I said, agree with what they're saying or not, and then look at what the hell went on in Charlottesville. Just look what went on. I mean, they talk about removing a statue of Robert E. Lee, and all of a sudden the white supremacists and neo-Nazis want to hold a rally, which, again, is their right to do, but you started off on Friday and start chanting racist things and anti-Semitic slogans. Is that the way? Is that what we do? To leading into some moron 20-year-old kid driving his car into a group of people and killing a young lady and injuring 19 others. I mean, and all the violence that went on in this protest. So I guess that's as we lose our minds that these guys knelt for the national anthem. And I get why you want to be mad about it. But what I would say is, and they're not mutually exclusive. You can dislike them both. You can. I would imagine there's a lot of people that are just absolutely saddened and disgusted at what went on in Charlottesville, and a lot of people that are disgusted with guys that protest the national anthem in the NFL. And you can disagree with both, but I would say just take a step back for a moment and say, okay, these guys are silently protesting by sitting and then explaining their views, as opposed to driving a car into a group of people and killing somebody, or having 34 people injured in the clash that's going on, or a group of people, idiots, that are chanting, anti-Semitic and racist comments, that's inciting so many things. So I guess that's where I'm putting them together. Again, to say you can dislike them both, but just for me, in my opinion, I'm not going to lose my mind on Bennett and Lynch and Kaepernick and what the other guys did. I can respectfully disagree with the way they went about it, but I'll listen to what they had to say rather than people that are doing it in a violent way. I guess that would be my point of comparison with these.
Yeah, there's a degree of proportionality that obviously one is reasonable even if you disagree with it, and the other I would think that any normal person would find unreasonable. Look, these are things that are going on that are at times impossible to fathom. You put the television on, and it is impossible to fathom that these things are happening in our country in 2017. So a few quick thoughts on those. There are not a lot of different ways to look at it, in my opinion. If you are a normal, patriotic person who understands the values that this country stand for, there are not a lot of different ways to look at the stuff that happened this weekend. There are two sides. There is right and there is wrong. That's it. And there are no other ways, as far as I'm concerned, to look at it, justify it, and there shouldn't be any reason not to say so. Having said that, when you move on to where we get to and how it connects to the world of football, I think that most people in this country would agree with what you just said. And that is, there are a lot of people who support. Okay, we could break it up, I guess, into several groups. There are many people who support what Colin Kaepernick and Marshawn Lynch and Michael Bennett are doing. With those people, there is no issue here. There are people who disagree with what they are doing, or whether they support the cause that they are trying to bring attention to, or and even if they do not appreciate the manner in which those men have chosen to make their stand, or not so. Fair enough. All people are entitled to that. I would think that the overwhelming majority of those people would find despicable the things that happened over this weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. At least I would hope so. So I don't think that is the majority. And unfortunately, sometimes I think when we see these things, they get so much attention, they get so much publicity. This is what they're trying to do. Right. Their goal is to get all of the attention they possibly can. And as a consequence, and one of the reasons is to make it appear as though their movement is far larger than it actually is. So that's one of the many tragic outcomes of maybe in the bigger picture, one of the more significant tragic outcomes of this weekend. That said, let's let you hear from some of the people in sports who were directly connected to this. Let's start with the Long brothers, as you mentioned, two very well-known football players from an extraordinarily well-known football family. Howie Long's sons, Chris and Kyle, both long-time now NFL veterans, and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia. Let's start with Chris.
You grapple with how do you react when you see that imagery and you know it's your hometown. I'm all for free speech. I mean, that can be ugly. People can have the worst opinion in the world, but, America's founded on giving the opportunity for free speech. But, I do think it's despicable. And at the same time, it's hard not to get angry. I don't know if that's what the point of those rallies is, to piss everybody off, but certainly you see it and you're just angry.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of anger with what went on to start that rally. As I said, with the chants that were going on by the white supremacists and neo-Nazis, whatever you want to call them. And I know the one thing that Chris also had said was he had thought. Now, obviously, he didn't do any kind of a survey, but he believed that the violence that was taking place, or a lot of people involved, were not from Charlottesville. He was trying to defend his town, and I understand that that's where you're from. But I also think if he felt his town was in the wrong, he would go down that road as well. Chris has been very outspoken on Twitter and in social things as well. But I do, and the person who drove the car that killed the young lady, injured other, was from Ohio, and part of his point was a lot of people came in from out of town, so he wanted to try and defend his town a little bit while also denouncing, the violence that was going on there. Yeah,
so I've seen some of the hometowns of some of the people who were identified as being part of that group, and I've seen Arizona, and I've seen, in fact, none of them that I've seen actually thus far were from Virginia, although some probably were. Here's Chris's brother, Kyle Long.
Coming from Charlottesville, it's a quiet town. The loudest it gets is on Saturday at Scott Stadium, and I'd say it was shocking to see that. But there's bad things that happen all the time, and like I said, just prayers for those who are involved, and hopefully we can just continue to do the right thing as a whole. And obviously there's going to be people that don't follow the same suit, and just don't be those folks.
It seemed like, I've got to know Kyle a little more than Chris, though I know them both. It seems like this really got them a bit. Again, it's about as familiar and respected a family, a football family, their father Howie being one of the great players of all time, being in the Hall of Fame. Both these young men, first-round picks, and playing well in the league, and they both seemed, and I follow them both, and along with what they were talking about, and they really seemed taken aback by this, that this is their town and what was going on in their town and just how horrific it was.
It is how everyone will now think of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is the home of the University of Virginia, which is a great university, and yet that's an association that everyone will now, people who are not otherwise acquainted with it, will now almost all automatically make. Anyway, we will spend more time on this as the morning continues, and we have guests on who will share their thoughts and their perspective. And we're trying to balance this with an understanding that you come here as an escape from this. And so while both of us, I think, have very strong feelings, and I'm trying very hard to make up my own mind about just exactly where it is that we take this. I haven't had this much difficulty making this decision. Now, normally I'll come in here and I'll say, Mike, here's what I want to do in the morning. And today is the first time in as long as I can remember, I walked in and I said to you, what are we doing? How do we handle, what is the appropriate way for a show like ours that has tried over the years to be a respite from the storm, if you will, to handle something about which we feel as passionately as we do this? And
there are two ways to do it, because I'm sure we'll get tweets out there that people are saying, stick to sports. You guys have no business talking about this one. You know what? Every person has a right to talk about this. Every person, no matter what job you have, has the right to have an opinion about what is going on here. And I would imagine a lot of that opinion they would be absolutely appalled at what's happening, and you're allowed to express that opinion. The others would be, hey, we know you have an opinion and that's cool, but we look to get away from that because it's a sports show. We have other channels we can go to for that. And you can, and you're right. That's why the majority of this, we're going to stick to the sports headlines and things like that, because we realize you can go other places with people that are better informed about some of the things. But still, again, it doesn't matter. Anybody on the street you can walk up to and ask them their opinion about this, and they should be able to give that opinion on what they think about it, just like we've done as well. But we also know our place here in the sports world and why you've tuned in, whether on the radio or TV, and so that's the majority of where we're going to be.
It shouldn't be that hard to give an opinion and to state the obvious in a circumstance like this. And so as a final thought to it, we would send join the millions of voices around America sending our condolences to the family of Heather Heyer. What a horrendous situation, and again, one that probably will be best addressed places other than this one. But there's a lot of it's just very difficult at times like this to know what to say and to know where to cut it off, because you could say things that you will ultimately wind up regretting.
Yes, okay. We keep going with this. I think I would say things that would get beeped out an awful lot.
Yeah.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, we are Mike and Mike, and it is a very busy day in the world of football. Our buddy Adam Schefter, our NFL insider, who is always the busiest man in the building, will be appearing on all 28 hours of the marathon, as well as he did a year ago. So, Schefty, I have no idea why you're awake now. You should be sleeping your way into this day. But that's because some football news may break, and you'll need to be ready for that. You were the one who came in here Friday morning and told us be ready for the Zeke thing and be ready for it to be more significant than expected. So after the announcement of the 6 games on Friday, what sorts of things were you hearing from people around the league?
Obviously, it's a very significant decision, and I think that most owners are very happy. Most people and teams around the league think that this is what the league should have been doing. And it's interesting because I think publicly it took a while for everybody to come to that, because Jerry Jones was adamant that there was no domestic violence involved, and he kept saying that Zeke was not going to be suspended. That's what we heard. And again, I had been hearing that it would be a short suspension, and all of a sudden it just became blatantly obvious. Thursday, Friday, boy, domestic violence carries a 6-game suspension, and that's what they're looking at, and that's what they handed down. And that's why they put the rules in place. And I know the league won't admit it. I just think that the history of the league and its failures with the policies of domestic violence, they don't directly factor into the decision. The evidence in the case is why the league suspended him 6 games. But it's hard not to think subliminally that didn't cross people's minds, that they didn't get it right on Ray Rice and they didn't get it right on Josh Brown. And even if they didn't get it right on Zeke Elliott, everybody thinks they did get it right. So they must apply a stricter, firmer, stronger adherence to that policy, and that's what the league has done here. Now it'll be up to Ezekiel Elliott to go challenge that, and he will. He's expected to file that appeal on Tuesday, and we'll see what the appeals process has in store for him.
Well, we know, again, it was a 4-person committee who did the investigation. They gave their thoughts to Roger Goodell, who came down with the discipline, and now the appeal, which we know is going to happen, will go back to Roger Goodell or a designee that he chooses. So in reading, and I know a lot of us have read all the evidence that the league had against Zeke and read it page after page after page of it, and now it goes back to, as I said, Roger or someone he appoints for the appeal. Anyway, in your mind, 6 games gets lessened at all? I don't think it will. What do you think?
Listen, I would guess going in that I would just say that Zeke Elliott has a uphill battle here. I mean, it's possible that a game or two could be shaved off. We've seen it happen before. Other players have had certain appeals reduced, particularly if they're contrite. But as it's been explained to me, I don't think he's going to be contrite here. I think he's going to come in gloves off and try to take apart the NFL on the facts that it accumulated. I think that's the wrong approach because the league believes it has the evidence, and I know that Ezekiel Elliott, the Dallas Cowboys, they don't believe that the evidence is there. But it doesn't matter because the league believes it's seen enough, and the league makes the ruling, and the league makes the ruling upon appeal. So you're asking him to be contrite about something that he doesn't believe happened. So it creates a difficult dynamic there that doesn't work in his favor. And again, as it was explained, the gloves are going to come off during the appeal. We saw the NFL letter that went out to Ezekiel Elliott with all the evidence documented, and I think you're going to see Ezekiel Elliott here over the course of the days of the appeal, leading up to the appeal, begin to release all the evidence that takes apart the NFL's evidence, that questions the NFL evidence, and everybody will be left to decide what they believe is right and what they believe is wrong. Now, again, ultimately it doesn't matter. I don't care what Ezekiel Elliott has to take apart the NFL's evidence. Again, they make the ruling. They make the ruling on the appeal. And they've made the ruling once already. So no matter what you say to take apart their argument, I just don't see how that's going to prevail in the long run. We'll see.
Adam Schefter with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, who just went into the Hall of Fame last weekend, has long been a very vocal supporter of Commissioner Roger Goodell. Your Twitter feed, Schefter, was the first place that I read on Friday after the announcement of the suspension that Jones was furious. Can you expand on that a little bit? And what, if anything, the owner of the Cowboys can do with his anger?
You know, that's a great question, Greeny. I don't know there is a lot that he can do. Look, Jerry was very outspoken again that he had read the report, didn't see that the league had any evidence on Ezekiel Elliott. The league obviously disagreed with that. He was, the exact word that I was told was very close to furious, but that was the toned-down, less profane version of the word that I was told. And I don't know that there's a lot that he can do anyway. Precedence has been established here. In the Brady case, it's reaffirmed Roger Goodell's powers. I guess they could always try legally to go that route, but Tom Brady didn't receive notice. That was the argument of why he went to court. They'd have to find a reason here to take this case to court if the appeal did not go their way. But I think first things first, everybody wants to see how the appeal goes, what the ruling is, before any steps then would be taken. And even if there were steps taken after that by Ezekiel Elliott, by Jerry Jones, I think that it's challenging to get something done. I think the overwhelming chances is that when the Cowboys play the New York Giants to open the season on September 10th, Ezekiel Elliott is going to be on the sideline. And I don't know if we brought this up on Friday, but I think, and I've said this before this weekend, it's a crossroads in young Ezekiel Elliott's career. Because, and I'm not just talking about this incident, this domestic violence incident. When you speak to enough people in and around that organization, they have expressed concern about the decisions that he's made from a lifestyle perspective, off the field, at night, all sorts of things like that. And if the suspension holds and he's away from the Cowboys complex, including the bye week, till October 23rd, which is what it would be right now, it's a lot of time to be left on your own. It's a lot of time to grow and get reflective and take stock of your life and realize everything that you could have if you do the right things. And it's also a time where you're away from that structured environment without a lot of discipline and can kind of do what you want, which is what concerns some people with the decisions that he's made in the past.
And we saw Colin Kaepernick kneel for the national anthem and then sit. Others followed suit last year, and we see where Kaepernick is this year. We just saw this past weekend Michael Bennett from the Seahawks, Marshawn Lynch, his former teammate, now with the Raiders, both sat for the national anthem. What's been the reaction around the league really a year removed from when this started with Colin Kaepernick?
Well, listen, it looks like it's a storyline that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think on the one hand, you've got players supporting players. On the other hand, you've got an issue that I think alienates some people. If we're going to bring it back to Colin Kaepernick, Marshawn Lynch apparently has been sitting for the anthem for a while. It did not affect his employment status. Michael Bennett is a top-tier defensive lineman. Did not affect his employment status. And again, I bring it back to that. You factor in all the issues when you're deciding whether to sign a player. It's not just that. Now, again, if Colin Kaepernick had stood for the anthem, if he had not been the controversial figure that he was last year, would he be playing in Baltimore today? I think he would be. I do think he would be. But, again, I think that he would not have been on the street that long anyway if there had been nothing. Teams want players that they believe can help them win right now. And I think there are teams that there aren't enough of those teams. There were not enough of those teams this offseason to wind up finding work for Colin Kaepernick.
And finally, Shefty, what can we all look forward to in 28 hours of the fantasy football marathon, watching you and everyone else getting started tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN2?
I made a major mistake last night. I got up about 2:30 in the morning, and I could not get back to sleep. And I'm thinking, this is the worst night in the world to get up early and not be able to sleep. So I couldn't sleep last night. I can't sleep tonight. And it'll be challenging. It'll be fun. It's last year we did it. I will say this, that Mike Golic Jr., Stugatz, all those guys, I had so much fun doing it last year for the 28 hours that we did it last year. And I would expect that we will have just as much fun this year while going over a whole bunch of fancy football stuff, which I love. And we'll do it while we don't get to sleep at all. So, it's a great combination of things. We're all looking forward to it. We'll see you in here when we're back tomorrow morning to be a part of it as well. Thank you, Shefty. Good luck. Thanks, guys.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The best of Mike and Mike.
I think Bryce Harper is fortunate that he's going to be walking and is walking and will be running again pretty soon. That's an example of one of those where there are some injuries that look so gruesome and then prove not to be nearly as bad as they would have looked. And then there are so many that don't look, that it's quite the opposite. They don't look like nothing, and it turns out to be serious. The fact that Bryce Harper's avoided any major ligament damage from that thing on Saturday night, I'm assuming everyone has seen it by now, is just unbelievable.
I have seen football players walk off the field with a slight limp and have a torn ACL and be done for the year. And then you see these, like when I saw Kevin Durant's, I thought, oh, man, and they dodged a bullet with that one. I saw this one, and I thought, oh, the way when it slid off the bag and then his heel and the cleats, heel dug into the ground. You saw the hyperextension, so you know the bones are smacking together. And I thought, oh, no, he's going to have torn something in there, and he didn't. He has a bone bruise from, just imagine, the hyperextension and the bones slamming together. he's got the bone bruise, and I would say he'll be out probably about a month. That's just my thought on these injuries. And when you hear the diagnosis and know that there wasn't ligament or tendon damage in there, I think he'll be out about a month or so. But, man, watching him fly through the air and watch him hit the ground and watching that knee straighten out, I thought he was done.
Here was Bryce Harper afterwards.
I don't like wet bases. Definitely a bummer. You're hitting the bag and, just trying to hustle down the line and get a knock across the bag, and pretty much felt like I was like a slip in the shower. I thought to myself, it's 10 o'clock at night and we're playing a game in the rain. I was really upset about that as well. But it's just a freak accident, freak situation. I think it flashed before your eyes, and then you realize, there's nothing you can do. I think we got the best possible news that we could.
Without question. And when you saw him going off the field, putting no weight on it, you had to think, oh, my God, tell me what our expectations were.
If he was done.
And we're losing this guy. I mean, they got the absolute best news they could get. But now it started this whole firestorm of, what do we do? Change the bases. What do we do? Change everything around. And it happens when a star player gets hurt. We go back to Buster Posey in blocking the plate. And I know that our baseball people have said there had been talk about stopping the catcher from getting run over. But what was the straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah, it was the
Buster Posey blowing out his ankle. So, okay, that's it. Something has to be done. Here's Bryce Harper. Thank God it wasn't a season ender, but it was still a pretty significant injury. Now it's like, can we change things? What can we do different now for the base that's been around forever in baseball? I don't know. With every injury, especially to a star, do we think we should change something? Is it something that we can change that won't affect anything? That nothing would look different, but it would be different. I don't know, but that's usually it can be an outcry when a star gets hurt.
You're going to play 162 games in that condensed period of time. Some of them are going to take place in conditions that are a little bit wet. I don't know how you make the base drier than it was. It is just a terrible fluke circumstance. People get hurt in sports sometimes. You use the right term. This guy dodged a bullet. That looked 1,000 times worse than it wound up.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast.
So I got two quirky fun facts for you. One of them is related to the PGA. The other one is related to the football marathon. And then we're going to get Golic's thoughts on some of the preseason football over the weekend. But which do you want first? You want the football marathon quirky fun fact or the PGA quirky fun fact?
PGA fun.
Okay, you're going to like this. I got this from Jason Sobel, who covers golf for us at ESPN, and who is a very good Twitter follow if you like golf. So you saw that the winner yesterday of the PGA Championship was Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas, whose first name Justin and whose last name Thomas each have 6 letters in them. Did you know? The winners of all 4 majors this year had 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last name. Sergio Garcia, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas each have 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last name. Now, you can go one of 2 ways with that stat, and I'm gauging from the look on your face which way you're going to go. You can either, as I did, say, that is fascinating. What are the odds that something like that could happen? Or you can have the look on your face which suggests you're about to say,
that is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Why? You don't find that fascinating?
No.
I find those little things in life fascinating.
Not one bit. Not a bit. Nothing. Nothing about that. I thought you were going to have like a fun fact that I would really enjoy.
I think it's a fun fact.
That's
How could you not enjoy that fact? What's not enjoyable about that fact?
Fun about that fact. It's coincidental. That's about it.
Does this suggest to you that Ricky Fowler will win the next major because he spells his name Rickie, that's 6 letters, Fowler, that's 6 letters. Fowler, it would seem, should be in line to win his next major.
I would say we go.
How about Martin Keimer? How about Daniel Berger? How about Graham DeLette? They all spell their names.
That's what we need to do is go through the entire PGA field and find out 6 letters for first and last name and just put them.
So you're poo-pooing my 6 letters.
Poo-pooing big time.
Again, this is Jason Sobel. I'm not stealing it. I'm enjoying it, and I'm passing it along. That is Jason Sobel's little note.
Yes. Well, now I really see why you're attaching it to Jason Sobel, so it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Let me read you one more tweet, and then I want to get some of your thoughts on the preseason NFL action that you saw this weekend. Our own Linda Cohn was listening and chimed this in on our conversation about Bryce Harper. The game shouldn't have been played. 3-hour delay, rain 20 minutes into the game, which began at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Fans suffer and player safety suffers. Listen, I agree completely. And the point I was making, and by reading the note that I got from my friend Chris, is it's a perfect illustration of how no one wants to hear your problems if you're rich. So, like, Bryce Harper was making a point. That game didn't start till 10 o'clock. It was raining. It was ridiculous. We shouldn't have played out there. Now, this kind of thing can happen. Fluke injuries happen all the time. And he didn't talk about it endlessly. Right. He talked about it briefly. He just sort of threw it in and mentioned that he was aggravated about it. But the point is that a lot of people pick up on that, and their first reaction is, you make $13.62 million. I'm not interested in hearing your problem.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear.
That's all I was doing.
Nobody wants to hear about that problem. And I don't know the ins and outs of that. I don't know the scheduling of when they can make it up, and you start to get into that part of the equation. So I don't know. All I know, it's probably not the first or last game he's going to play after a long rain delay. I've heard others say if he'd hit the bag properly, it never would have happened.
He hits the middle of the bag.
Now he's trying to get there quickly, so the steps. He's reaching for it to make a play to get to first base. So I know what a lot of the tweeters are saying is you're taught how to hit the bag, the front of the bag, and properly hit the bag as you're running by. You learn that in Little League, the fundamentals of the game. But, in a play where you're trying to get there, you're trying to get to the base, and you're just reaching out for it, we've seen guys do. You're not supposed to slide head first into first base, yet guys do it. And he's trying to get there, so he's trying to reach for the bag. It was just one of those fluke things where the fundamentals say you hit the front of the bag, but in a play when you're trying to get there and you're trying to reach for it and you're trying to get there as soon as you can, you're not always going to hit the fundamentals of everything. And in this case, he caught the top of a slick bag. It's a fluke thing. It happened. I don't know if we need to change everything for it. I saw in a Buster Only column, talked about lowering the level of the base, talk about there was
it's shaped like a crown. They've changed it. It's crenellated now.
It's
like a crenellated parapet sitting out there in the middle of a base path.
Make it spongier so your foot kind of sinks into it. You look at the old baseball movies that they make on there where they were like actual bags out there,
right,
that you kind of stepped on and they gave, or make it kind of tackier. There are gloves out there, like gloves that have the tack on them and are waterproof.
Like rain gloves for golf.
So do you make them, the base out of that? I don't know. I don't know if it's something that you could just easily fix, put a tackier paint, because they paint the bases as well to get them nice and white looking. And then if it rains, so it's slick, and you find a way. I would think in this day and age you can make them not slick. But I mean, are we going to seriously start talking about lowering the height of a base or something? That's not drastic, but a real change thing in this. I don't know if we need to go that far.
Well, could you make? So Steven Pinzino tweets at us. Could you make all the bases like home plate except square? So home plate is like how do you even describe, what is it? Everyone knows what home plate is. I don't need to describe it for you.
But basically
it's not a bag.
It's flat and it's rubber.
Yeah. It's just like
Now, I heard Dan Z, who's working on our show, my son Mike was talking about the different changes, and Dan got on and said that the most dangerous base is home plate, of which, as I was listening to it, I disagreed with him. He had said he'd been talking about when you were in Little League, I think, Dan, you said that you were told to run behind it if it got wet because it wasn't safe to run on home plate.
And obviously we have all this guaranteed money tied up in your contract, so to lose you would be devastating. I mean, Harper is one thing, but we can't lose Dan Z.
So to not hit home plate, is that what you were spewing this morning? Am I getting that correct, Dan?
I was actually talking about something far more important, and that was slow pitch softball.
Oh, God.
And it is, the umpire would make a ruling that if it was raining, you could actually step behind the plate rather than on it, because stepping on a wet home plate is pretty dangerous. So the rule was as long as you were relatively close to just behind the plate, you were good to go.
This is a great day.
Why?
Can I tell you why this is a
Why
great
is
day?
that?
Because we finally found someone who can speak on this program who's less athletic than I am.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's a rule for non-athletes.
I mean,
that's all that is.
If you're not capable of stepping on home plate in a slow pitch softball game, I feel all of a sudden I'm Usain Bolt. I'm whoever it is that won the decathlon at last year's Olympics. That's how athletic I am comparatively.
You're talking about men's slow pitch softball.
Oh, I stepped on the bag. I've scored a lot of runs. I played some ball when I was growing up, and I stepped on that base every single time.
The ump is basically looking at the group out there, seeing some guy in an extra small, and it's still baggy on him. Another guy, when he bends down to take a grounder, his butt crack is showing, and he's saying, my God, guys, don't run on home plate. Oh, I see Dan just put the microphone down. He wants no part of this anymore. Seriously, you were told not to step on home plate because it was too slippery for you.
It wasn't me personally. It wasn't like they looked at me and they're like, hey, man, you're the guy. Home plate, not for you. It was a co-ed Sunday softball league. It was for everybody, Mike.
And it was obviously, an extraordinarily high level of athletic competition.
Without question, yeah.
I'm still more fascinated by the 6-letter spellings of the first
really
and last
are.
names
You
of all
really,
the PGA Tour
that's
players.
amazing, yeah.
All right, Mike and Mike brought to you by DraftKings. Try daily fantasy for free at DraftKings. Use the code Mike now at DraftKings.com. So, Golic, as you were watching the preseason action this weekend, as most teams are playing their first preseason game, give me one thing that stood out for you.
Well, I'll actually give you a couple, and I mentioned it when Ryan was on, in watching and in hearing about all the quarterbacks, as I said that they need time. The one guy I thought that would need less time would be Deshaun Watson because of his experience in college, and he had a nice game. But I tell you, the guy that impressed me most was Mitchell Trubisky, a guy with 13 starts. And I know it wasn't against the first team. I get all that, but I'm judging someone on what they did when they were in the game, no matter who they were playing against, okay? And he played well. The one thing about them, Deshaun Kaiser was a little slower of a start, but he hit his stride a bit in the second half. One of the things he does best is hit the long ball. But Trubisky, his accuracy to me was the key. He was not throwing guys to bad situations. He was throwing to guys and giving them the ability to run with the ball after the catch. He was moving well. I thought him and Deshaun Watson really played extremely well. So it really made me start thinking who is going to be that first guy on the field. Trubisky was one we thought he's redshirting. He's Christian Hackenberg. He's not getting on the field. And now you hear, not only does he play well, Glennon doesn't play well, Sanchez is nicked up, so more reps are going to come Trubisky's way. So I'm really interested to see where that direction goes. And the other one is what I talked about, is Zeke Elliott's not there, but they have that offensive line. Need to keep an eye on that O-line for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they're working on a contract for Zach Martin. He'll be the highest-paid guard, deserves it. They got Fredericks, the center, fantastic. Tyron Smith, the left tackle, who was one of the best in the game, he's got that bad back, that bulging disc in the back, and that is a bad thing, and he has not seen the field yet. So you got to keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, La'el Collins was a starting left guard. He's over at right tackle. They have a new starting left guard, and right now an injured left tackle. So that line that I still think is a great line, it's got some issues to it, and now you don't have that running back behind there. That is absolutely something to keep an eye on.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com. All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Dominique Foxworth will join us in a second on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I got a tall sheet of tweets here of a variety of different topics, all your Twitter reaction through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Mike, as you were doing a very nice job doing a video breakdown over there, I was just looking. The Baltimore Ravens have just tweeted, we have waived quarterback Dustin Vaughn and signed free agent quarterback Thaddeus Lewis. So you had another quarterback signed by the Baltimore Ravens.
I think that's their third they signed since the news about Joe Flacco. And, again, Flacco not back on the field. Again, we're talking about a back issue. He hurt weightlifting. Back issues are so tricky. You really want to take your time with it. Hopefully for Baltimore, it's more precautionary of keeping him out and not recovering from it. And again, I know why you're bringing that up, because the name Colin Kaepernick has come into play, especially if this Flacco injury is going to be a little more than we think, or a re-aggravating type of an injury, and they need a more long-term quarterback. Is Ryan Mallett going to be that guy, or do you bring in someone like Colin Kaepernick?
And I understand that they're, with regard to this particular move, they're trying to figure out some better option for themselves, but it does feel like by making this constant rotation, it is almost flaunting the fact that they're continuing to make quarterback move after quarterback move after quarterback move and not making the one that everyone is waiting for.
The one thing I'll say is the quarterback moves they're making aren't for quarterbacks to really be on the field. If you're making a move for Colin Kaepernick, you're making a move for a guy that you may have to count on. It's Flacco, hopefully coming back, if not Ryan Mallett. These other guys are signing. I don't think they're arms in camp and not really a thought process of these guys are potentially going to lead our team. If they get into that scenario and that situation and they still are signing other guys, that will be a little more eye-opening to me.
Let's bring Dominic Foxworth in on that conversation. He is the host of the Morning Roast here on ESPN Radio and so many other things, and, of course, was the president of the National Football League Players Association, so has a pretty good understanding of, not pretty good, he has an extraordinary understanding of how a lot of the inner workings of things work. Good morning, Dominic Foxworth.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So I want to start there because the current president of the NFLPA, Eric Winston, we'll get to Zeke Elliott, but the current president of the PA said recently that the union is ready to help Colin Kaepernick. This is a situation that he has that is different than almost any other I can remember in the years that I've been covering this. So you, from your knowledge of the inside, what exactly could the union do for Colin Kaepernick if it tried to?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's much that they can do now. Like, you can file a grievance, but I'm not sure the evidence that they would have to support that he is being potentially, or the evidence they would have to support that he's being blackballed or kept out of the league and the teams are colluding in some way to keep him out. Like, it seems very obvious to us that when names like Thaddeus Lewis are popping up, getting shots on the Ravens roster, that, no disrespect to Thaddeus, but I don't think that he has the resume that Colin has. When that starts to happen, those sorts of things point to him not being treated fairly, and I think we all know that. I appreciate what the Ravens have done so far as far as being, like, public with their deliberation, but it's unfortunate that they didn't have the courage, frankly, to go the next step. And it's not just them. It's a lot of other teams who have far less courage than them when facing this issue.
And then moving on to the Zeke Elliott situation, let's start first with the 6 games. We had all thought 1 or 2. Shefty came on the end of last week and told us it could be more than that, like 6. We were all a little surprised. Were you surprised it was that heavy of a suspension?
Yeah, I was surprised, and I think that speaks to while Zeke is an imperfect person for us to have this conversation about, and it seems that the NFL actually, for once, did a pretty thorough investigation. But the fact that we were all surprised, you didn't know what to expect, you were thinking 1 or 2, maybe 6, and we're all over the place, I think that speaks to what the problem is with the NFL. And I completely understand them feeling that they needed to take some sort of action. And like I mentioned, this investigation seems better than the ones they've had in the past. But the fact that it feels so arbitrary, it's just kind of how the commissioner is feeling, seemed to me to be the problem, and has been a problem for a long time with commissioner discipline in the league.
Agreed. I mean, the drug suspensions, we see certain numbers to them, but with this, we've seen it all over the place. I think it should be 6 or more, but at least 6. Start with it, stick with it, and let the appeals process go where it's going to go. On that note, the appeal, well, it goes back to the commissioner or someone he designates. Do you see any way, after how long this investigation took and all the info they have, that it gets dropped from 6 games at all?
Yeah, I'm not going to be foolish enough to speculate, because if you would have asked me before the 6 games, I would have said I would have said another number, and it would have been completely wrong. So I don't know. I could see it being reduced. I think this is, while Ezekiel has some other public issues, this is kind of the first time he will be punished. So often the commissioner in the league is a little lenient when it comes to appeals with first-time offenders. But like I mentioned before, you never really know what to expect with the league, and that's unfortunate. And right now with Ezekiel Elliott and what he's being accused of, and with the evidence that they have in that report, no one's going to jump on the table and fight to defend Ezekiel Elliott. I understand that. It's fair. But when the commissioner makes a mistake in his discipline, which he's done, I think, more times than he's gotten it right in recent history, at least, then we're all going to be very upset. And we can point back to a number of examples in the NFL's history that kind of set this precedent.
Mike and Mike, Dominique Foxworth, again, the former president of the NFLPA. So in most of those dealings, it's the union on one side, the players on one side, and the commissioner representing the owners on the other. In a unique case like this one, where the owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, who just won into the Hall of Fame and has long been one of Goodell's most vocal supporters and is an extremely powerful figure within the sport, is said to be furious. I asked Shefty the question this morning, what does that even mean? Like, what if Jerry Jones is really, really mad, what can he do about it? And Shefty wasn't sure. From your understanding, having been on the inside, if one of the owners is really, really mad at Roger Goodell, what difference does that actually make?
Well, I mean, there's 31 owners, and then the Packers are publicly owned. So I remember very clearly that Robert Kraft was one of Goodell's biggest supporters, and he still came down hard on the Patriots, in part because Goodell is a politician, and his constituents are the 31 owners. So he needs to please all of them. He can't just focus on pleasing just one. And I think that played a big role in the suspension that came down on the Patriots, because a lot of the other owners and teams were frustrated with them feeling that the Patriots got off light with some other cheating scandals. So I think that the fact that Jerry Jones might be upset means something, but if the rest of the owners don't see this as something that they want changed and they're okay with it, Roger Goodell has to have enough votes to keep his job going forward, frankly, and you don't get those votes by just kowtowing to the interests of one party in that group.
In a bigger picture manner of looking at this, Dominique, there are some people who might say the NFL creating its own investigative arm to look into this, there are some people who might not like them doing that. They would argue that the league should sit back. They should wait for the legal system to run its course. There were no charges brought against Ezekiel Elliott, and people will say, well, if there were no charges brought, then the league should just stay out of it and let him play. From your perspective, as a former player, as a former leader within the Players Association, and now as a commentator and someone as close to it as you are, where do you fall in that debate?
Yeah, I mean, I go back, like you mentioned, I've been involved in NFLPA in a leadership role for quite some time, and there was a time when you kind of waited, the league waited until after some sort of criminal justice decision was made before they made any sort of discipline on their side. And then, frankly, it was one of the bigger mistakes I feel like we made on the union side. It was around the time when Pac-Man Jones was getting into issues, but he never actually was convicted of anything. At least he hadn't been yet. And the players were upset because we all recognized that it wasn't a good look for us as a league. And that was kind of the point when we kind of okay the idea of Goodell having some extra judicial power, because I guess we thought it was something that would be in the best interest of the league and the best interest of all the players to kind of protect the image. And from that point forth, I think Goodell's gone overboard with that sort of thing. And it's not something we've talked a lot about my union experience. And one thing that comes up all the time when you bring this up is people say, well, the union negotiated it, so you can't complain about it. But as you know, I've written about and talked a lot about the kind of power asymmetry between the union and the league. And it's also important to know that this player discipline stuff is a key in their minds, in the minds of the owners and the commissioner. It is a key to their revenue generation. And they want to draw sponsors, big name, major company sponsors that can afford to pay billions of dollars to be associated with the NFL. The last thing they want to do is have the NFL shield to be associated with criminals, frankly. And while there aren't that many of them in the league, all you need is a few high-profile cases to go unpunished for them to feel like their image is sullied and for sponsors to walk away. And, I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of the NBA issue back when they felt that they had a problem with, like, hip-hop, so to speak, and they pulled out all the dress code things because they wanted to control their image, because they recognized that these major companies are careful about who they want to associate with. So it's something that is non-negotiable, frankly, in the negotiations of the CBA for the league and the union.
I want to ask you this. Yeah, I want to get onto the field, but you as a former player, me as a former player, I brought this up before. A couple of guys, we didn't get in any trouble. We didn't have to worry about the discipline that was going on, that's going on now. And when you get to the CBA, I went through a strike in '87, so you want to fight for certain things. Would you, if we're sitting in that meeting room and our player rep is telling us things that, hey, do we want to fight for this? Do we want to fight for that? If you were told, hey, we don't want the commissioner to have control, we think this is huge and we want to fight for this, would you buy into that and say, you know what? Is that something that I want to put my neck on the line for, or would I rather fight for something else, knowing it's a small amount of players who are getting in trouble and maybe we don't like the discipline from the league, but why don't we fight for something that affects 2,000 and not 200?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the logic and part of the reason why the commissioner discipline issue is unlikely to change, but it feels that way until it happens to you or until it happens to your team. I remember very clearly that, and I know you guys had Ryan Clark on earlier. Maybe you should have him on again later and discuss with him how the Steelers felt about commissioner discipline, because they felt like they were wrongly targeted a bunch prior to the last CBA negotiation, and it was something that I believe that locker room was interested and willing to fight for, but it didn't affect the rest of the locker rooms in the same way. So I understand everyone is all gung-ho about they want to get higher salaries, they want to get commissioner discipline fixed, they want to adjust schedules, everybody wants everything until it comes time to pay for it, and there's a cost for all of that stuff. You have to either pay for it with your sacrifice or pay for it with percentage and the revenue share. It's not something that you can just take. You can't go in there and manipulate the owners and commissioner with some sort of fast, fancy negotiation tactic. It has a cost, and guys most often, logically, frankly, are not willing to pay that cost for a punishment that they'll probably never face.
We are Mike and Mike. Dominique Foxworth is with us. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. He's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Let's do some on-the-field stuff. Your all-22 piece on the undefeated this week is in part on rookie quarterbacks, and it certainly has struck me. Again, we're talking about one game for most of these guys against, with backups and against backups. But I certainly was struck by how, generally speaking, most of the high-profile rookie quarterbacks looked really comfortable and really good in their debut performances. What's in the piece on the undefeated, and what was your takeaway?
Yeah, so I wrote that piece last week. I've been just trying to give everybody, I get frustrated, honestly, with how much kind of misinformation and kind of lazy analysis that I find myself having to be exposed to. So I decided to go in and try to give people 22 kind of deep football insights that can help them win their football debate. So that piece last week about young quarterbacks, I got a piece coming out tomorrow, I believe, that's going to dive deep into offensive coordinators and game planning and those sorts of things. Just try to give people the facts and the real kind of deep information, so when you get caught at the water cooler with that annoying guy who thinks he knows football, you can mic drop on him with some real football insight.
That said, how about the rookies? From what you did see from Mahomes, who everyone said, he's nowhere near ready to play. And again, it's a preseason. I understand. From Trubisky, who people said is nowhere near ready to play. Watson, maybe it shouldn't surprise us because of his experience, and maybe he was more ready to play coming in. Deshaun Kaiser had moments. What did you take away from that?
Yeah, I'm not on board with the people who are going to dismiss this as just preseason or it's not a big deal. While I understand you're going to see base defenses and you're not going to see exotic blitzes, I do agree and understand that it's a lot easier to perform in the preseason than it will be in the regular season. But you got to start somewhere, and you don't have to go far to see what Dak Prescott did last year in the preseason, and he turned out to be pretty good in the regular season. So I'm not going to crown any of these guys as Rookie of the Year or future All-Pros. But I do think that it's encouraging what we've seen, and I think it's indicative of a trend across football. Is freshman quarterbacks are a little bit more prepared. There's a lot more education about how to play the position in the younger levels, and guys come into college a little bit more ready, which means that they then get to the NFL a little bit more ready. And if the coaches are doing things to put them in the right position and they have good support around them, there's no reason why any of those quarterbacks can't do well going forward. And I would even go as far as to say I think Deshaun Kaiser has a really good chance, because I think Hugh Jackson has taken over that offense, the head coach there for the Cleveland Browns, and he is, in my mind, one of the kind of sharpest offensive minds we have in the NFL.
I like how with the pieces you're doing, you can take people into where they don't normally go. So take us there as well. I have my perspective in doing it, and I'm sure yours. We're at about the third, for some into the fourth week of training camp, third week of camp, coming up to the second preseason game. Where were you as a player mentally at this point?
Yeah, not in a good place. Yeah. But fortunately, so we keep going back to the CBA stuff, but we managed to get 2-a-days eliminated, and I never get in the last negotiations, I never get text messages from players thanking me for that. I just get text messages complaining about all the things that aren't perfect. But I do think that the guys' bodies are in much better shape now than they were back then, and I think it's probably true of us too. When we played, it's better than the condition the guys' bodies were in prior to that. But at this point for me, during training camp, I was looking at the schedule, counting till the end of training camp so we could get to some real games, because not only is it a tax on your body, it's on your mind too. It feels like Groundhog Day. Every day is the same. It's not very fun. It's hard to get excited about matching up against your teammates for the second time and this day and for the 15th time in the last week, and you just want to go play against different colored jerseys and also in games that matter. So this time at camp is really tough, especially for veterans. I think the young guys is a little different. When I was young, camp was a different experience because you're kind of fighting for a job and fighting for the attention of the coaches.
He is Dominique Foxworth. You hear him on the Morning Roast. You read him on The Undefeated and many other places all across ESPN with terrific insight into football issues both on and off the field. Thank you, Nick. We'll see you soon.
Great, guys. Thank you very much.
That's Dominique Foxworth, again, circling it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. I have said all along, and I'm by no means an expert in these areas, but if the Players Association wanted to do something for Colin Kaepernick, I'm not 100% sure I know what they could do.
I don't think they can do anything for them outside of trying to prove collusion, and I don't think any of us believe there is collusion to keep Colin Kaepernick out of the league. So other than that, I don't think there's anything. I know Spike Lee is heading up a rally that's coming up, the 23rd or 25th or something in August in front of the NFL headquarters.
It's next Wednesday.
I mean, I understand what they want to show support, but that's not going to get him a job or help get him a job either. I don't think any owner of the 31 owners, 32 again, with the Packers being public, is going to feel forced into giving him a job, and I don't think anybody is Roger Goodell is going to pressure any owner to say, hey, we need to get out from under this, someone sign him. I don't think that's happening either. So I don't really think there is a whole lot anybody can do about this situation.
As far as Zeke Elliott is concerned, that's where it becomes sort of a complicated issue when you are in the leadership position of a union. You heard him say no one wants to jump up and pound their fist on a table for a guy when you've seen some of the evidence that was in the report that Roger Goodell, in the letter, I should say, that Goodell sent to Zeke Elliott. That said, it is their job to defend the players' rights, and if they feel the players' rights have been violated on some level, that is their responsibility to go at it. But Zeke Elliott got 6 games here, and I don't think anything is going to change that. I think Zeke Elliott is going to miss the first 6 games of the NFL season.
I don't either, and what we hear is I'll say this, we hear the Dallas Cowboys involved in a whole lot of suspensions, including Zeke. Cowboy players have lost 104 games due to suspension since 2014. That's 39 more than any other team over that span. 104 for them, 65 for the Ravens, 54 for the Redskins, 51 for the Browns. They're getting guys suspended, and they're getting fined from the league because of that, because of the amount of guys they're getting suspended. So, may need to look in the mirror there a little bit at what's going on. They seem to be having guys on that team that have a hankering for getting suspended, Zeke being the latest of that. But and I think one of the conversations, too, getting back to Zeke, in what Shefty said, in the appeals process, is Zeke being contrite? And it doesn't sound like he's going to. It sounds like he's going in there blazing with, hey, I didn't do this. Here's my proof that I didn't do it, and they're going to fight it that way. So I don't think that number is going to be coming down at all.
The other thing that I thought of when I realized how bad the suspension, not bad, how significant the suspension is, and Shefty's initial tweet that talked about how incredibly angry Jerry Jones was, my first thought was, I think they waited until after the Hall of Fame for this.
Oh, I do
for that
as well.
Reason. Don't
so
you?
Jerry wouldn't
give
bring
it a
that
few
up.
days.
Yeah.
Not only that, but just because this was Jerry's celebration.
I agree.
Everyone was going to be around him, and he was going to be around everyone else. And they probably knew how upset he was going to be by this.
I agree.
So I when people talk about how long it took, no one will ever acknowledge this. I can't prove it, but it certainly seemed reasonable to me that you might say, let's wait until after the Hall of Fame, give it a couple of days, your typical Friday afternoon, news dropping of a story.
Yeah, I think when people are saying it took that long, I don't think they just meant this extra week and a half, that it was way even.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But let's say they made this decision I'm making this up, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you said, okay, we got sitting there on August 5th or whatever day it
Cowboys
was.
are
Jerry
playing
Jones
in the Hall
going
of Fame
into
game.
the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
They're playing in the Hall of Fame
I can see
game.
it. I could see it.
Do you want that front and center in the story?
I could see that.
I don't know that for sure, but it certainly seems sensible.
The best of Mike and Mike.
What if I told you that one player this year became a major champion, shot the lowest 72-hole score in PGA Tour history, became the youngest player ever to break 60 on tour, and became the owner of the best single-round score to par in U.S. Open history, and that all those things happened in the same year? You might say he is the Tour Player of the Year.
Say it's a pretty good year going on right now.
And he is right now the PGA champion. Congratulations and welcome to Mike and Mike to Justin Thomas. Justin, again, congratulations and well done. How are you this morning? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a lot better than I have some other post-major championship Mondays, that's for sure. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. And we showed on TV just a few minutes ago that one remarkable shot where the ball hung on the lip for what felt like forever. Can you take us through the emotions of sitting there watching that ball hanging there and before you even got a chance to consider walking up and addressing it, it tumbled in?
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things that, when you win, things just happen and tend to go your way. And I felt like I played really well in some tournaments this year, but just some stuff didn't go my way, and it wasn't meant to be. And I understand that happens. And when that ball flew in, I kind of was obviously not only did it was great to make a birdie, but it put me in a better position to I moved up and was closer to the lead, and Hideki had just made about a 30-footer for birdie, so that was huge momentum-wise to not let him kind of steal one from me. And I don't know, it was weird. I felt like it, even as soon as it stopped on the lip, I really felt like it was going to go in still, because the hill was going that way and the grain was going that way, and I still don't know how it didn't go in the middle, to be honest, because I thought it was going to go back to the right and it didn't. And then when it hung there, it was just, it was so far on the lip that it was just like, man, this thing has to fall. And I kind of wish I would have seen it go in, but hearing the crowd go nuts was kind of a great way to find out, too.
I probably would have looked foolish because I'd have jumped up and down next to it and waved my hat at it until it did fall, which probably would not have been represented well on the PGA. As this round is going on, it's getting closer and closer to the end. What was going on in your mind? I'm sure not doubts, but was the mind really kind of constricting there, and was your caddy keeping you less nervous? Take us where we can't go there.
Yeah, my caddy did an unbelievable job. Jimmy Johnson was keeping me just calm and in the moment. And, he just kept saying, let's just keep hitting our shots, bud. Let's just keep doing what we do. Let's just keep playing our game. And having a great caddy in a situation like that is huge. I can't really even put it into words, honestly, how important it is and how much it's needed. For someone like me, I was there in contention at the U.S. Open to start the day, but when you have a chance to win the back nine and then the last 5 holes, it's a different animal. And I don't know, I was just very calm all day. I felt so comfortable, and I felt confident. I really, really felt good about my game going into the week. I put some great prep work in, and I don't know, I just felt like it was going to be a good week, and no matter what, and the result was just going to kind of, we'd wait to find out, and I was glad to find out what it was.
Justin Thomas, major champion, PGA winner, is with us on Mike and Mike, and this is of the four majors the one that I think means the most to the PGA professionals. Your grandfather was a PGA professional. Your dad was a PGA professional. What does it mean to you, and what did it mean to them for you to hold up that trophy?
Yeah, it's something that I'm very fortunate to be able to share with, being the third generation of a PGA professional or PGA member. And myself, my dad was so excited when I became a PGA member, last year. I think that's something that probably a lot of people don't understand, as they would just assume that we're all PGA members, but you have to become one. And I, knowing how important it is to my family and my dad and my grandpa, and how the amount of work that my dad's put in, and I've watched it firsthand, and to have him there yesterday and share that moment with him and all my family, and then get to talk to my grandpa was it's really cool, and something that'll never be taken away from us and never be taken away from me. And it's just cool knowing that first one was kind of for us.
And I love how you say that first one, because I know in your mind there are going to be many more, and there certainly may be. And a lot of your young cohorts on tour were there. What was it like for you? I saw Ricky there and Spieth and probably quite a few other players that we didn't get to see on TV who hung around to be there to celebrate with you. What was that like?
It's really cool. It's something that I think is awesome. I don't know if you want to call it a tradition or a habit that we're getting into, but anytime you can see your friends win at the big stage is, it's awesome. It's the winning a major is the pinnacle of a lot of people's careers, and it's at the height of mine right now, and to be able to share that with some of my best friends, Jordan and Ricky, and then Bud Cauley hanging around. He finished his round before I even started. I was about 8 minutes from going to play, hitting putts, and he was walking in the scoring tent. He just finished his round. For him to hang around 5 hours, and he's got a tournament in Greensboro next week. He lives with me down here in Florida, and that's just something that I know wouldn't have happened 15, 20 years ago, but it's just kind of where the game is right now. And yeah, we all want to win for ourselves, but if we don't, we hope our friends can, so we can kind of enjoy it with them. And to have those guys there, and to have other friends there. Jordan and Ricky's girlfriend's hanging around, and some other friends that we have hanging there, and family, and just it was really cool. It's hopefully something that I get to experience a couple more times and many more times in my career.
Justin, well played. Well done. Congratulations. Have a great rest of the year.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
It's Justin Thomas, PGA champion.
I think an incredible point he made right there. All those guys hanging around, I said, that wouldn't have happened 15, 20 years ago. We talk about the NBA and how these guys are friends now and hanging out and how that wouldn't have happened in the old days, and he says that's the way it is now. That is very interesting of this young group of guys.
And we ran out of time, so I didn't want to waste any of the interview with us. But
God, we ran out of
all
time.
4 major champions had 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last name. And this was after the death of Arnold Palmer, who had 6 letters in his first name and 6 letters in his last name.